Welcome back, everybody, to the second half hour of News Talk here on News Channel 8. Our special guest this time, and we'll keep her to the top of the hour, D.C. Police Chief Cathy Lanier. She's here every month at this time. Great opportunity for us to talk with her about whatever's going on, and for you as well to ask questions or have a comment, be able to talk directly with the Chief Law Enforcement Officer in the District of Columbia. Of course, at the top of the hour, we talked a lot about the terror attacks in Brussels. If you missed that, it'll be online, as our video always is, at news8newstalk.com. We'll go back to the phones and your calls at 703-387-1020 as more of your calls come in. Chief, can you give us an update on the death of a Russian businessman named Mikhail Lesin, who died in a D.C. hotel? There have been editorials. There's been a lot written, a lot of speculation about this gentleman's death, given his prominence back in his home country.
Right. So a lot of confusion that gets out. People are, a lot of speculation, a lot of theory. The facts are that the death has been ruled undetermined. There's no connection or no criminal connection. It's not been ruled a homicide. So right now this is a death investigation that continues. So limited is what I can say, but I realize that there's a lot of intrigue out there because of some of the stories that have been put out and because of his former position.
And so right now, the next main step, I'm presuming from what you just said, is the ME's report on cause of death. That kind of points you into the next set of questions?
Well, the ME's report came out last week or week before already, and he has not ruled this a criminal homicide. So this has been ruled an undetermined death at this point, so there's no cause of death that came out of the medical examiner.
Does a medical examiner report that's sort of inconclusive make it harder to work backwards and piece together all that happened before the death, that caused the death?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of information in the case, and the detectives will do like they do with any death investigation. So we investigate any death that's an unintended death in the district. So we handle a lot of cases like this every year. It is not uncommon to have an undetermined death, or undetermined manner of death. So the cause and the manner of death is what's normally ruled. We don't always know, but the investigation, if there is a way to determine what that manner of death that's going to come out in the investigation. Right now we don't have a criminal investigation. It is a death investigation.
You're with us every month, and it's always great to be able to talk with you about whatever's happening. Last year we talked a lot about homicides because there was a contrast in 2015 with some of the trends we had seen in years past, because murders were up. I read now where the homicide rate in the District of Columbia has returned to pre-2015 levels. Is that true, and what do you think is going on? Does this represent a victory of sorts for law enforcement, or is it more to do with how people are settling and solving conflicts? Give us the latest on what's happening in this area.
I mean, I wish I had all the answers to the questions you asked. We are down right now, and people often make the mistake of looking at where we are today compared to the exact same day last year, and the fact of the matter is homicides nor crime, really, you can't really compare those two things and get an understanding of where we are globally. But we are right now, if you compare where we are right now to previous years at this time, we're actually below where we were pre-2015. But it all depends. I mean, our increase in homicides last year started in May, right? So you have to look at, you can't, violent crime and homicide trends, you cannot look at month by month compared to prior years. I mean, you really have to look over a longer period of time. I do think that we have gotten a handle on the issue. There are some, I think 63 cities in the United States had increases in homicide last year, in North America, I should say. And some of those cities are continuing to see that rise. So we have not seen that rise continuing into this year, so I feel very good about that. But violent crime and homicide in particular is something that you have to be very, very diligent on and remain focused on keeping those numbers down.
You mentioned in a prior segment that you had deployment at a big political gathering. We are seeing this election cycle some amazing incidents. We're seeing violence. We're seeing people punched at rallies. Can you reflect on this from a law enforcement perspective? We've always had differences politically in this country, but I think it's fair to say that what we're seeing now, and there have been some just memorable and troublesome images that have kind of been burned into the nation's psyche in the last few weeks, where people who are there to protest and are being led away, and they're on their way out, they're getting smashed in the face. I mean, this is...
It's not the image of democracy that we think of, is it?
Not so much.
It's not that it hasn't happened before. It has, and I remember, I've managed several and participated in several presidential inaugurations, and we've had some inaugurations where we really have had a lot of civil unrest, and there's been conflict with police and between groups, and so we see it periodically. It's unfortunate because the whole idea here of the democracy is that people can pick their candidates and rally and kind of move on collectively. But we were fortunate; we didn't see any violence at the APEC conference. We had several candidates spoke yesterday. So no violence at our rally, and we hope not to see any. And the bigger picture, we've got an inauguration coming.
You see these images like the rest of us. Are you rethinking what it means to police in an election year, at a time of where the anger seems to be surging, at least in some communities or at some events?
I mean, obviously, we watch what goes on in every event that will eventually make its way to the city. I think every city does that. So we are following what's going on. We do communicate well with the Secret Service. We get a lot of information that we learn that way. But, of all places in the nation's capital, we deal with a lot of conflict and political, conflict all the time between opposing groups. That happens, a couple hundred times a year here in Washington. So I'd like to think that we are prepared for whatever this election cycle and the coming inauguration is going to bring, because we do deal with it quite a bit.
There were media reports recently that talked about search warrants at the wrong address. What happens when the wrong home is raided? What can you tell us about the extent to which this is a problem? What can you tell us generally about this issue, about the concerns raised in the report? Right.
So oftentimes big stories like that, some of the important facts, the smaller facts, don't make the story, and they're important. So, when they look at all search warrants served in the city, not all of those search warrants are served by the Metropolitan Police Department. There's multiple agencies here. We serve about 1,800 search warrants last year. In a vast majority of those cases, I mean, they're all tied to a criminal case. Vast majority of those cases, evidence was recovered. What I look at is, civil filings. So if you look at the 1,800 search warrants, I think we had a total of 17 civil filings, and of the 17 civil filings, all but two or three were for claims, just a claim to get the door repaired or get something repaired. If it was a search warrant when no one's home, for example, we would, use force to enter the premises. So, with 2 or 3 complaints out of 1,800 for wrong address, it does happen. I mean, in some cases, it's because the offender themselves was in fact living at that property, gave that property as an address, and had in fact in some cases committed crimes at that property. And still in some of those cases we do recover evidence related to the crime. So it does happen, and there is a claim process to follow through. We try not to ever let it happen.
Back to the phones. Sarah Bate, line 1. Go ahead, please. You're on the air. What's your question or comment for Chief Lanier? Good to have you with us.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call.
Yes.
My name is Sarabjit, and I'm a Sikh gentleman from India, and I wear a turban and I have a beard. And when I work in the Washington D.C. area, but whenever somebody stop me, a police officer or somebody, they relate me with the Muslim. They identify me as a Muslim, and they say go to the Middle East, and I'm from India, not from the Middle East. And I just want to check with the police chief if they are educated in a way so that they can identify in a proper way as a Sikh gentleman instead of a Muslim.
So actually we have a very good relationship with SALDEF, which is a Sikh organization that's worked with us. We are one of the only major city police departments in the country that allow people to join MPD, and we waive some of our standard grooming requirements for the Sikh religion. So we're very well aware of the Sikh religion and what's associated with that, and whether Muslim or non-Muslim associations. And when you say you feel that you've been profiled by police in the district, I always remind people there's lots of police departments in the district. Not all of them are MPD. But if you ever feel like you are not treated properly by a police officer, no matter where you are, you should make sure that you file a complaint so that the management of that agency can follow up. I mean, we have policies that allows SICs to actually become a member of our department, where most major cities, I don't know of any other major city that allows it other than MPD. So we are very well aware and sensitive of those.
And the more, going back to the point you made a second ago, the more specific information you can provide about who your interaction was with, the better the process can work toward figuring out whether something. I mean,
if you were going to make a complaint about a police officer, if you just give the day, time, and location, that's helpful. Obviously, our police officers all wear name tags. If you can get the name tag or car number or anything like that, it's helpful. But if you don't have an opportunity to get that, just the day, time, and location, most interactions between police officers and community members are recorded in some way.
Chief Lanier, stand by. We'll take a quick break here, our final break here. When we come back, more of our conversation with and more of your phone calls for DC Police Chief Cathy Lanier.